Hey guys, this is Chris, and I'm making this video to clear up a little bit of confusion. And I apologize if my previous videos have caused any of this confusion. That's never my intent. There's been a lot of talk with new firmware for the quads, for the cameras, and new compasses. And these have been pretty much attached to the SS and the A. So I do notice that, through the questions that I'm getting and through some of the conversations from people private messaging me or in discussions on Facebook, there is a little bit of confusion that pops up from time to time. Since this new camera firmware has come out, and I made my last two videos how to do the upgrade on the camera firmware for the SS and for the A, there seems to be even more confusion. I try to explain everything the best I can when I do these videos, and I'm human, I do make mistakes, and usually somebody finds a mistake, whether I end up just saying a version wrong of the firmware or I say S instead of SS. One recent one was when doing the camera firmware update for the H501A and the SS, I said there is no way to tell in the menus that you have this new camera firmware. One thing I completely forgot about, because I don't use it anymore, I don't like it, is the Hubsan app for the H501A. So if you do the camera firmware, or you want to check what version you currently have on the 501A, you can use the app and go into there and check what version camera firmware you have. So thankfully a subscriber, actually he wasn't even a subscriber at the time, a person who viewed the video then became a subscriber, thank you, and I apologize, I forgot your name, but he quickly pointed out that you can find the version number in the A, and I completely forgot about it because I do not use the app. No disrespect, Hubsan, but that app is just, I don't like it. It's not a reliable app. People that have problems with their quads, it's more, with the 501A, it's more when they're using the app. And if you notice, there hasn't been an update for several months, so I don't know if they've just got their hands full or if they're just had it with it themselves. I don't know. But anyhow, let's clear up a few things. And with that, it's mainly the new firmware, the new compass, and the new camera firmware. So what I'm going to tell you, it's my opinion, my recommendation, it's not gospel. What you do with it is totally up to you. And I'm not trying to sound like a know-it-all. I'm not trying to sound like my way is the best way, but I'm just going to tell you what I think you should do. If you know me and watched any of my videos or have had any discussion with me on Facebook or through private message, you'll know I'm very passionate about the current firmware version with the original compass it's the package that has FC1141. That is absolutely the best firmware that the H501A and the H501SS have ever seen. They have never had a better firmware. The only better firmware, or on the level of reliability, it didn't have any real features or anything, but the only better firmware prior to that was for the H501S, and that was Superflyer. I still have two H501Ss, and both of them have Superflyer on it. I will not put anything else on those. That's a very good firmware. So here's going to be what I'm going to recommend for everybody to do. Number one, if you have the original compass, and say you have version FC1136 or FC version 1138, both of those came out real close to each other. If you have those packages, ditch them. Ditch them. I don't care if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you know how to upgrade firmware, or you're confident enough after doing the research how to upgrade firmware, ditch them. Upgrade your firmware. Everybody likes to say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm just going to say, to me, that's an ignorant statement. I'm not calling anybody ignorant, but I think it's an ignorant statement. Because firmware upgrades are made for a reason. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You don't care about any new features, or you don't care about any little bug fixes or fine tuning or anything like that, fine. Just stay with what you got. But the reason I say go with 1141 is mainly because there is no better firmware for these two. It's the most responsive, it's the most reliable, and you get a new feature. So the new feature alone, if you like features like orbit mode, the new feature is orbit here mode, or circle fly mode, circle fly here mode. That's one place I might confuse people, because I like to call it orbit mode and orbit here mode. Hubsan will even call it orbit mode sometimes, and they'll call it circle fly sometimes. But it's also known as circle fly and now circle fly here mode. So that right there is one reason to upgrade both of these to 1141. So for that right there, if you care about features like that, that's a good reason, because you're not going to have that on your old versions. But my main reason is just after testing it, and it took about 6 months to make that package perfect, because there were so many little flaws along the way. I probably have 15 versions total between the TXs, the RXs, and the FCs that I had to test on both these models to get the package to where it is today. And no, I'm not saying I'm the only person that does the testing and all that, but I will say that throughout that 6 months of testing, everything that I reported back, they did fix and address. I wasn't hearing anybody else's names that seem to throw the alarm every time I make it sound like I'm the only tester. I didn't see your name in the hat, so my hat's not off to you for anything except for complaining every time I say I test the firmware. So I'm making it clear, I'm not the only one. I think I'm one of the only ones that makes it effective as far as getting the changes made, and Hubsan does take my recommendation seriously. They do work to take care of the things that I report, and they don't release the firmware until we both have agreed that we're happy with it, and they have my file format, the way that all the folders are laid out with everything separated. That's something that I make up and do, and they don't do it without my changelog. So that's why you haven't seen the new versions for the new Compass, because I hadn't gotten the changelog done, and we were working on a couple things that slowed me down, like a version number for the camera firmware, which I still never got. But now Hubsan has all the files, and sometimes it can take them a week, sometimes it can take them a couple days, sometimes it can take 2 weeks, but they will be loading it on the website soon. I'm not saying that I released it, but I did play a hand in it. So back to the firmware versions. Trust me, anybody that puts on 1141 and says they absolutely hate this firmware, I'm going to tell you, you have something wrong with your quad. Because if you're going from 1136 and 1138 to 1141 and say that one of those is better, the only thing I'm going to say is maybe due to the area where you live, geomagnetic compass or something like that is the only reason that 1136 or 38 would be better. But there are people that I talk to that are in South Africa and Brazil, and they're on this firmware and it works perfectly fine. When we test this firmware, we test it in those places too. So I automatically know it works perfectly fine there too. So again, if you have the original SS and the original A compass, upgrade to those versions if you have not already. If you have already, just stick with them. Don't change a thing. Just because there's new camera firmware, don't upgrade to it. And the reason for that is when they do camera firmware, it always comes with a new firmware upgrade. So when we got the new firmware upgrade for the new compass, we got new camera firmware. It's made for that package. Doesn't mean it can't work with any other versions, but Hubsan recommends, and I recommend, you only use that new camera firmware with the new quad firmware. So everybody asking me, can I install the new camera firmware version 1.1.14 on my old firmware version 1.1.4.1 with the original compass? I'm going to tell you no, don't do it. There's no need to do it. You're not going to see any difference or improvement. Believe it or not, camera firmware can affect the flight characteristics of your quad. I know from a good experience last winter from crashing mine. It was acting totally crazy, completely out of control to anything I was giving it in stick commands. It wasn't interference because I tried other different test versions of camera firmware, and then it picked up different characteristic problems. So you want to just stick with what is meant for that package. So if you have the 1.1.4.1 FC and the 1.1.4.3 RX, then chances are you do not have the newest firmware for that version, which is 1.1.10. I'll add that, I'll put a link to that camera firmware version in this video. So if you upgrade to 1.1.4.1 and you want the best camera firmware for that version, it's 1.1.10. No need to go up to 1.1.14. The 1.1.14 was made for the new compass firmware. So with that being said, let's get into the new compass firmware. If you have the new compass, you already have this firmware. So some people, some of the questions have confused me because they say they have this new compass, their quad came with this new compass, and then they're asking about this new firmware. You need to check your version because you already have the firmware versions that we're talking about. So if you have the 501A, you have 1.1.4.6, 1.1.5.0, and then 1.1.17 for the advanced TX and 4.2.3.6 for the standard. Those are your most current. You might not have the most current for the TXs because that we just got that done this month. These have been done. So if you received a new SS or a new A with a new compass, then you already have the latest FC and RX, and chances are you have the new camera firmware. For the A, go into your app and look and see if you have 1.1.14. If you have 1.1.10, you can upgrade to 1.1.14 and you probably will see improvements because you have the firmware that was made to go with that version. On the SS, you have no way of telling what your camera firmware version is. On the front of your screen, it'll say version, I forget what it was now, 30.84.84, something like that. That's not your camera firmware version, so ignore that. You most likely have 1.1.1 because that's the only firmware that was ever made for the SS. So now for the SS, you have a versionless version because it has no number, but it's the H501S-S-C-C or something like that. So if you if you've purchased this and you want to be extra sure you have that camera firmware, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and reflash it, reinstall it, make that upgrade. And when you do that upgrade, go to my video where I explain how to install the firmware, the camera firmware, how to do that camera upgrade. Inside you will find, in one of the folders, you will find detailed instructions. So between the video itself and these instructions that I made up, you won't have any problems. If you do have any problems, it's because you didn't pay attention. I've never messed one up. I've always done it to the T. It's very simple to do, but like I've said before, it's very simple to screw it up too. So if you get the new 501A SS, the 501 SS, and you're not sure if you have that camera firmware, go ahead, just do the upgrade, and then you'll know for a fact that you have it. Chances are there's plenty of 501A and SSs out there that do not have the new camera firmware on it. I don't know when they actually put that into production, but it wasn't the same time that it came out with the new Compass. So there's going to be some out there without this new camera firmware. So that is one thing you want to check on the A, and probably just go ahead and add it to the SS. So that all being said, the last thing would be is if you purchase the new Compass, once Hubsan makes it readily available, I only recommend that you buy it from Hubsan. If you go and, say Banggood says they have this new Compass and you order it from them, you run the risk of them sending you your original Compass, because from what I see with companies like Banggood, they really don't know what they have. They have no understanding of the builds of these, and they don't know what they have. The one thing you want to look for with the new Compass is, like I've said in another video, it's black. It's not green like the other Compasses, it's black. All the wires are black, and there's one wire that has the white thread on it, the white stripe. That's the new Compass. So it's very distinctive to tell, but even if a company like Banggood showed a picture of it in the description and it was black, I still myself would not buy it from them, because I don't trust them. They send too much stuff out because they don't have the knowledge or pay attention. So I recommend, if you buy the new Compass to put on your SS or your A, buy it directly from Hubsan. If you're in the US, contact Hubsan in California and see if you can get the Compass from them. Compass is super easy to install. All you do is take all the screws out to split the shell, and it's right here under the top with 2 copper screws, 2 brass screws. You just take it out, put it back in, or put the new one in and plug it in. It's a very quick, easy upgrade. If you know how to open up the shell on this, you can do this Compass upgrade. It's very simple. So now let's say you've bought the new Compass for the SS, you've bought it for the A, you want to install the new firmware. So make sure that you install the new Compasses, and then go and install your new FC and your new RX, and you can also upgrade to the new TX versions. The TXs, if you mix them up a little bit, it's not such a big deal. It really doesn't matter. That definitely will not affect anything to do with the camera firmware. Your RX is more likely to cause an effect with mixing up your camera firmware. So after you've done that, you've upgraded your firmware for the new Compass, then I recommend you do the corresponding camera firmware 1114 and the SSC-C versions for this SS model. And that's all just my opinion, that's all just my recommendation, but just real quick recap. If you have the original SS and A with the original Compass and you have 1141 package, keep it. Don't go anywhere. Leave your camera firmware versions alone, except for on the SS. You have no choice in no, I'm sorry, except for the A, you have the 1110, because this didn't have an update until recent. You have 1110, upgrade that camera firmware if you do not have it, and you have 1141. So that's my recommendation on that with the original compass. You have the new one that you just purchased, and it has the new compass in it. The only thing you want to do is just check your camera firmware on the app, and then if you're not, if you want to be extra sure, just go ahead and install the new camera firmware on the SS. And then the final recap is, if you install the new compass on both of these, install the new firmware for it to work the way it should, and then upgrade your camera firmware as well, the 1114 and the SSCC. And you can upgrade your new TXs as well. So that's pretty much it. I hope that clears it up. It gets a little bit confusing when you're talking about two models at the same time, and then we're talking about pre-compass firmware, new compass firmware, pre-compass camera firmware, new compass camera firmware. It's confusing. There's going to be people out there that probably want to argue it and disagree with me. But don't learn the hard way and mix up your camera firmware with older versions. It has a very good chance of working perfectly fine. I have tested the new camera firmware with original compass. It works, it's fine, but you don't see any difference whatsoever. It's not made for, say, the package 1141. Your original camera firmware is going to give you better results on that 1141. If you upgrade your quad firmware and you have the old versions of camera firmware on there, I know that too. It's not causing any problems that I found. But you upgrade to the camera firmware packages that they have now, or the versions that they have now, for those packages, that's where you'll see a more significant change. So those people that are going to argue with me or disagree that the camera firmware has nothing to do with how your quad's going to fly, I will tell you flat out, I'm not trying to sound like a know-it-all, but you're wrong. You're dead wrong. I found out the hard way. It does affect the flight. It will change things with the RX if you mix a camera firmware that has not been tested mixed like that. So I've already done the testing of mixing the camera firmware with the quad firmwares. I do know that they work, but I can't say that I recommend you do that, because it's pointless. You are not going to see the benefits. You're not going to get the benefits from doing that. So that's just me making the record clear that the people that disagree about the camera firmware with the quads firmware, I'm just making the point to tell you that what I say is not gospel, but I think you can pretty much trust it, just because I've experienced it. I've broke a quad because of it. And it was not anything like interference outside or anything like that. It was because of the mixed firmware. And people that I was discussing it with and testing at the time, they were witness and conversation of all the testing I was doing and then what happened on that day. So anything else? That's it. Hopefully this clears anything up. If you guys have any other questions or concerns or confusion, definitely comment. If you know anything about me, I just want to help. And so if you have any concerns, questions, just make a comment, and I usually reply pretty quickly. I'm not a bad guy, so don't get your feelings hurt, but I'm very direct. When somebody asks me a question that totally does not make sense to me, and I might come off a little rude or strong, but it's not. I don't mean it that way. I'm just very direct. I do end up hurting a lot of feelings, I think, on Facebook and on YouTube, just by the way I communicate. But I come from the South, and we're very direct, and well, yeah, I'm wearing the shirt today too. If I hurt y'all's feelings, then I apologize, but I do not intend to do that. All I want to do, and that's the reason I put in all the time to do everything I do, all I want to do is help. I have 3 Facebook groups. I make all these videos on what I think will help out. I don't just make videos and wash my hands with it and be done with it. Like this one, I made 2 videos. I saw some concerns that I had with the questions that were being asked, so now I'm making this one to clear it up. So all you naysayers and people that just want to argue with me, go ahead and make your own mistakes. Those of you who trust me and know what I do, you're not going to go wrong with the recommendations I make. The ones that I've made here today with the original compass, new compass, and adding a compass. You can't go wrong. I mean, you can do it wrong, but you can't go wrong with those setups. Those are very good setups, and I highly recommend them. So that is it. Do not mix your camera firmware with your quad firmware. Stick with what's intended for those versions. For the A, 1141 has an intended version of 1110 camera firmware, and then for the new firmware 1146, it has an intended camera firmware of 1114. Just keep it that way. That's the best thing to do. And I do want to just make it one final thing clear. If you don't have the compass, there is no need to upgrade. You're not getting an extra feature. You're not getting a better firmware. You're actually downgrading. So stick with 1114. 1141. If you don't have that and you have something like I said before, 1136 or 1138, upgrade it. If you know how to upgrade, you're missing out. Upgrade to 1141. It's the best firmware. I love that firmware. That's it. In my 2 videos that I have upgrading the camera firmware for these, I do have a link for the new firmware packages. It covers all the FCRX and TX versions along with the camera firmwares. I do have those in the videos for the SS and for the A, so you can go click those links and get the video and upgrade to the new firmware and the new camera firmware if you install the new compass. That's it, guys. I know I repeated myself a lot, and we covered it from A to Z, so I don't think there really should be any more confusion. But like I said, any questions, comments, anything you have to say is always welcome. If it's just downright nasty and rude, I'm going to delete it, so don't even waste your time. That's about it. So thanks very much to everybody for all the views and comments, for everything that I take the time to put together here. And thank you for everybody who subscribed. And as always, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel, not for the benefit of me, but for the benefit of you. Because I will always, as long as I can, take the time to give you the little detailed videos like this or the long detailed videos like this, and make sure you are as informed as you can be, and try to keep this hobby a good, positive hobby for you. So please subscribe, and you'll also get the newest content with some new models coming up. You'll be seeing some of that here hopefully soon with the new models. So that's it. Everybody have a great day, night, whatever it is where you in your part of the world, and thanks again. Take care.